My name is Maura Brannigan. I am the Executive Director of the YWCA, Great Lakes Bay Region. And we are an organization that has been around for almost 130 years. Next year is our 130th anniversary. And our mission statement is to eliminate racism and to empower women. And so the traditional YWCA story that so many YWs share is we provide services, boarding house, classes for women in the early 20th century, transitioned to having a gym, but with changing times and other constraints, we, about 20 years ago, I think, got rid of that gym facility, and we are specifically just only providing services, namely our Women's Economic Empowerment Program, which serves women in Bay, Midland, and Saginaw counties. And this program, just a little pitch for that, if you know anybody who would be interested or who this would help, it's a 10-week-long workshop of self-reflection and economic education, and includes guest speakers and provides information on financial literacy, job outlook, educational opportunities, and more. So our program is really necessary due to the decades of systemic racism, exploitation, community conditions, and this program also helps individuals examine their own behaviors that help contribute to poverty as well. So we are able to offer these classes free to the community due to the generosity of the community and family foundations, as well as the United Ways in our region. So thank you to all of our supporters and funders. So like everybody else on the planet, I think COVID has brought up challenges for our organization. And I know everybody else is dealing with the different degrees of challenges, but despite that, during this time, we've been able to work on some new things. And this fall, we'll launch a new service designed to create more equitable and inclusive work environments. And so stay tuned for that announcement. This is a little soft pitch. Just we're trying to get that started planned and kind of launched out into the community. We're going to be launching a new financial education program for the women in our economic empowerment program as well. So that is the main stuff that I wanted to cover. This is a quick introduction. So I will share my screen and we can get into the fun part of this presentation. So here we go. One thing I wanted to make sure we brought up and recognized, especially with our suffragists in the room here today. Today is Women's Equality Day, and this year is the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, which gave some women the right to vote. And this year is also the 55th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which later expanded critical voting rights and protections for people of color. So as today is Women's Equality Day, this is a way to recognize and mark the historic event and honor all the suffragists who fought for decades for the right, so we all show up at the polls and vote. So here are just some of the images that we shared online today, and just a way to recognize that 100 years of 100 years. It's amazing, and it seems like probably a second and not enough time at all. So, well, and one related point to this as well is that a lot of women use the right to vote, and this came from Pew Research, and I'm sure there's a million other similar graphs and charts out there, but historically women really have had slightly higher rates of voter turnout, and as you can see, 64% of women in the 2016 election versus 59% of men, but overall only 59% of the voter eligible population voted in 2016. So this is a great time to point out, if you have a roommate, father, brother, husband, co-worker, neighbor, dog walker, anybody you know that is maybe in that population that isn't as likely to turn out to vote, encourage them to say, hey, are you registered? And are you ready to vote this year? And just, gentle nudging to make sure that more folks just show out and use their rights to vote and participate this year. So I hope we got some more people showing up. So, before we go back, I'm going to go back one slide. And I don't know if I can do that. Okay, I do have a quick poll just to, I need to cancel. I don't want to do that. I don't know if I can use this. Cool. Oh, I really wanted to see if we could do this. Okay, snafu, something's going to happen all the time. The poll, shocker, was going to be asking if everybody was registered to vote and ready to vote in the November election. It was probably a foregone conclusion what the answer was going to be, but
there it is, actually. It popped up.
Oh, it popped up. Oh
It
my
popped
God.
up.
Okay, great. Here we go.
So you can vote. At
Okay.
least popped up on my screen.
Yeah, it's working. It works on some folks' screens, not working on my screen. But anyway, we'll get the slide down for the next one. So, well, great. Well, thanks for participating in that. These were anonymous. We might have another one later if that one decides to work. So we're going to introduce our wonderful guest speakers and experts. We've got Erica Armstrong, Midland City Clerk, and Ann Manary, the Midland County Clerk, and then Angie Miller, President of the Mid-Michigan Labor Council. And if Erica, if you want to start off and just kind of just do a quick introduction and talk about why you are the person that we should listen to, not only because you're wonderful and you're a board member and you're an expert in this stuff, but why voter registration is something that you know something about.
Sure. So I am the Midland City Clerk, as you said. Part of my job, and it would be the job of many other city clerks in our area, or if you live in a township, your township clerk would be responsible for this, or sometimes assisted by our county clerk's offices in Saginaw Bay or Midland. I, as a city clerk, maintain the qualified voter file, which is the list of registered voters in my jurisdiction. So I help people register to vote. I enter information that comes from the Secretary of State's office when somebody registers to vote. For example, when they get their driver's license, I send out voter registration cards, and of course actually administer the election on election day to help those people cast their votes. So it's a very big part of my job, but not the whole thing. I also work for the Midland City Council and as the record keeper for the city of Midland and administer the cemetery. But a very large portion of my job deals with voter registration and administering the elections.
Awesome. Thanks, Erica. Ann, you're next. Probably some similar overlap as you are clerk as well, but can you talk about this a little bit?
Sure. So actually, the Midland County Clerk is actually oversees all the elections in Midland County. So we work very closely with Erica in the city, making sure that she has everything she needs for election day. But I also have 17 other city and township clerks that we work with and make sure that they also have everything they need to, work with the qualified voter, make sure that they have their ballots on election day. I train every one of the election inspectors that work for us in the county of Midland, including in the city. We've got about 300 people that volunteer. And I say volunteer, they do get paid. However, they don't get paid nearly enough to be able to do this job. It's about a 14-hour day for someone who works the polls on election day. So I do the training for that. And as I said, I work very closely with the city and with the township clerks, making sure that they have everything they need to get everyone out there being able to vote, whether they want to vote in person, whether they want to vote absentee. That's all part of the job. And I've been doing it for about 30 years, kind of dates me, but I've been around for a while. So, kind of one of the things that I love. The county clerk does lots of other things, but right now we're just talking about elections. So we'll just move forward from that point.
Awesome. Thanks, Ann. And Angie, you're next. How about you talk a little bit about why voter registration is something you know and care about?
Sure. As you stated, my name is Angie Miller, and I'm the president of the Mid-Michigan Area Labor Council. And I also work with a group called The March Continues. And so here in Saginaw, primarily in the city, we've done a lot of work, not only getting people registered to vote, but on the permanent absentee voter list. In the city, we saw that there were a lot of individuals who may be registered, but were not exercising their right to vote. And so there was a concern on whether, whether they had transportation, or maybe they were a single mom who had to work and then take care of the kids and was unable to make it to the polls. So we've, along with voter registration, we've concentrated on getting them on the permanent absentee voter list.
Awesome. Well, thanks. This is great. Well, it's kind of teeing up some of the next subjects, and we'll really get into some of the questions, the finer points and the specifics. But what I wanted to talk about first was how to get out the vote. And I know we really wanted to hold this event, not only because today is a special day, but also there's been a lot of public discussion about safety of absentee voting. There's lots of misinformation out there. It was just kind of a fever pitch earlier this month. And it's really hard not to be able to go out and talk to people one-on-one about this. So we're like, okay, we're just going to figure this out. We want to make sure everybody knows some tactics and some tools that they can use to, nudge, ask, encourage, harass, whatever, people to vote. This is not going to be a discussion about who to vote for. This is obviously not partisan. We just want everybody to show up and vote. COVID obviously providing challenges to people wanting to wait in crowded polling places for health reasons. And there's a lot of barriers. So we just want to try to knock down a couple of those barriers tonight. So one, and this is definitely a spot where Angie can jump in, but there are great little soft things you can do. No, Facebook does it. Is I'm a voter, I voted. The button on Facebook the day of, you can kind of peer pressure / shame your friends into also doing the same thing. I don't know if people lie about that. I hope not. But you can definitely select the digital version of getting the little voted sticker after you fill out your ballot. There are some other tools that I know there are a plethora of just different organizations working on these things. Rock the Vote, Vote Save America, I could go on, that are trying to make sure people have these resources, but they are like more of a national level resource. One that the YWCA USA has partnered with is When We All Vote. And they were working as associations across the country to help drive voter turnout and registration. And so they have a lot of great resources. And if you're really interested in using apps on your phone, there is an app called Outvote, and it is pretty cool. You can register and, commit that you're going to vote. You can get in there and play and partner up with friends and try to get people registered to vote. It's kind of a social thing and an interactive thing. But the one cool thing they kind of put nudges out there, like these things, hey, this is a statement that you can copy and paste and nudge your 5 friends to remind them to register and vote in November. Just constant information you can share on Instagram or social media to kind of inform people, remind folks that it's an election year. But Outvote is the name of the tool, and I'll share that in the chat near the end. This is it's kind of cool, but again, it's going to probably drive you to some of the resources we're going to share anyway. Later on, it's going to direct you to the Secretary of State for Michigan. It's going to nudge you in some of those directions. But one other, I don't know, I thought this was cool. They have a QR code. And I tested this 3 times before tonight's Zoom, but you can hold your cell phone, turn on your camera, and you can aim it at the screen, and it will open a window in your browser, and it will take you to register to vote. So it is maybe something you can do if you're out walking your dog, or you're out just, meeting with your hairdresser, and they're like, I don't know if I registered to vote, blah, blah, blah. Maybe, this QR code. Maybe this is a tool that would be helpful for folks that are really interested in tech savvy stuff and have their cell phones on them at all times. So again, all these resources will be in the chat box at the end of the day. So we can cover a lot of that stuff. And so what else? And I'm going to kind of go over to Angie here too. Barring, going door to door or being a little bit more one-on-one with folks in person, what are some other tools or good ideas or things that people maybe are like, I'm really nervous about, getting in people's business, but like voting is really important. Like, how do we
Right.
move beyond that?
Right. Just like we're on Zoom right now, you can very easily have a neighborhood Zoom party. And, you can all go on the Secretary of State's website, make sure that you're a registered voter. One thing last year when we were knocking doors to get people on the permanent absentee voter list that we found interesting was that there are individuals out there who are convicted felons, and for whatever reason, they do not believe they're allowed to vote. And that's not true. They can vote.
Absolutely.
And, we heard that over and over, so I'm not sure where that information is coming to them from. But they need to get registered, and it's completely legal. They're not going to have a problem if they're on parole or anything, because many of them are concerned about, breaking the law. So.
Absolutely correct. If they have served their sentence, they are eligible. So that's an old, I think, law that was on the books many years ago, that if you were a felon, you were not eligible to register to vote, run for office,
Right.
so on and so forth. And that was gone away with, I think, in the early 90s. So I think it's just something that's hanging over from that time period, that people believe they're not eligible.
And it may even be that way in other states, possibly.
Could be.
That's where it's coming from.
Could be.
Yeah. But, Zoom party is great. Like you said, you can, text friends. I have someone right now who their kids are hand designing postcards, and then they're writing personal notes to people and to remind them to make sure that they're registered and to please get out and vote, which I thought's a great way. They're teaching their children to get involved. So that was a great thing. The more creative, the better. Have a wine party. You can do that over Zoom, right? There's all kinds of things you can do and make it fun. And, as women, there's so much about our history that we really didn't learn in school. We might have learned about Susan B. Anthony, but we didn't learn all about Susan B. Anthony. How many people remember that she actually is a convicted felon, right? They might know now because there was a pardon, but she was a convicted felon because she voted before technically it was legal for her to vote. And there are lots of women out there. And once you start talking about it, you talk about a soap opera, this is the best one there is. There's all kinds of stuff going on. So, there's lots of resources out on the net right now. There's movies that individuals have done. There's documentaries. There's podcasts. All of those things you can use and create some type of event.
That's great. I know the PBS
that was
documentary.
Great. Yeah.
Oh gosh, I think I've been telling everybody I've been come in contact with, like, this documentary that was on PBS, and it was phenomenal. So I learned so much. Like you said, I didn't know any of that stuff, and I care about this. So highly recommend. Awesome. Well, I like this. This seems like really personal and a way to interact with folks that is not like, again, I'm going to get up in your grill and let's have a political debate. Like, let's just engage in this civic process together, and let's encourage each other. So I like that.
Yeah, and I think we're all looking for a way to connect with people right now, because in many instances we're not able to get close together. We're not able to, do some of those functions that we've done before. So this is just another reason to get together with people.
I love it. Okay, great. Well, fantastic. I like that a lot. Well, great. And we'll kind of get back to some of this stuff, and if there's any questions, or we'll kind of circle back to any other get out the vote ideas, but really love to jump into the panel discussion. And I have a really boring slide up here right now. So well, I've got the questions here, and I will kind of start off with the big one, and I might direct this, I might just start on my Zoom screen here and just go down the list, and anybody who wants to jump into and add on, please do. But I'll start with Erica. What do you need to do if you have never voted absentee in an election before? What's your first step?
Well, the first step is to know in Michigan it's a two-step process. So you want to get that started early. You have to request an absentee ballot, which requires a form and a signature. The Secretary of State has recently made that an option to complete online if you have a driver's license in the state of Michigan. So you can do that without needing a printer or going to any office or anything like that. But if you've never voted before, you need to know that you actually have to ask for the ballot. It's not just going to get sent to you. And the sooner that you do that, the sooner we can get you your ballot. I'd also recommend doing some research with your local clerk's office, whether that's the city, township, or county. They pretty much would all be able to assist you in some way, or on their website to find out what the local process is. Some clerks have drop boxes where you can return your absentee ballot. If you've never been to your township or city hall where the clerk's office usually is, you might want to find out where that is. So if you do have questions, or you need to do something like register to vote, or pick up an application, that you know where to do that at. Just to start.
Awesome, great. Absolutely. And anybody else want to jump in on this? I guess it's probably clear cut. That's there's just a process and you go through it. But yeah. Let me see. I guess I'm going to pop this down to Anne here. What is the importance of, and I've heard this a lot, and updating your address with your clerk, making sure you've got your most important information, your contact information updated. What's the process? Is there a good deadline to get that done by, or as soon as possible, a good one, or?
So that poses a very interesting question, because as some of you may know, the Secretary of State's office is by appointment only right now. So even if you move, it's very difficult to get to the Secretary of State's office to change your address. So you should make sure that you go to your local clerk's office, whether it be the city clerk or the township clerk, and you re-register to vote, so that we know where your location is. If you move within 14 days of the election, you need to make sure that you do visit your city or township clerk in person to register to vote, so that you will be able to receive an absentee, or either an absentee ballot or a regular ballot on election day. I do have some information. I did a Zoom meeting last night with a group, and I'm going to be happy to forward this to you. It has lots of the question and answers that we've been talking about tonight. It may be beneficial for you to post out on your site if you're interested. It talks about absentee voting, things that you need to produce at the polls on election day. So I'll forward that to you. If it's something you're interested in, you can certainly use it. But again, you just need to make sure that you go to your local clerk's office. If it's within 14 days, you can certainly try and get an appointment with the Secretary of State. But it's my understanding that the appointments for the Secretary of State are now at the end of November, 1st of December, for you to go in and change your driver's license. So there are other things you can do, and Erica probably is a better expert on this because she actually registers people to vote in her office, where I don't do that part in my office. So she's probably better to answer the question as to what kind of information she's going to need from the voter in order to be able to register them and assure that they get a ballot, an actual regular ballot on election day than I am. That's kind of like, that's her area.
Okay, Erica, take it away.
And definitely right in everything she said. I can fill in a couple of details. That deadline she was referring to, the 2 weeks before the election, it's best if you're able to. The deadline this time is sort of be 14 days, 2 weeks before November 3rd, that you need to register to vote, which registering to vote includes if you moved. So if you moved from one city to another, one township to another, one state to another, you actually need to re-register even if you already were in your prior location. A lot of folks are able to do that online, change their address to the Secretary of State. But because we're moving to that enhanced driver's license process, some people are running into the problem Ann mentioned where they can't get an appointment. Your local clerk is still able to register you by mail or email or in person leading up to the 14 days before the election. So you can find that voter registration form online, and I think Maura's going to share some resources later to easily be able to find that form. And that form can be printed and signed and mailed to your local clerk's office, mailed to your county clerk's office. We prefer it goes directly to the clerk though. And you can also email it directly to that clerk's office. It has instructions on the form of how to do this. You can look up or call your clerk if you want clarification, but that can actually change your address for you. If you moved within 60 days before the election, it's required. So if you show up at the poll or you show up in the clerk's office trying to get an absentee ballot and you've moved and haven't updated your address, what Ann was referring to is you wouldn't be eligible to receive a regular ballot. Your ballot could end up being challenged, which means it's traceable, so that if we find out that you provided inaccurate or fraudulent information later in the process, that we'd be able to pull your ballot out of that system and say this vote actually didn't count. So we want to avoid that. We want everyone to get a regular ballot and have their vote counted on election day. So the best thing to do is to, as soon as you move, to contact your local clerk or find that form and turn it in. If it's within those last 14 days and you procrastinated or you just weren't able to, you have difficulties getting into the office or you having access to resources like a printer, then that's okay. You can still go to your clerk's office in person in those last 14 days and register to vote and receive an absentee ballot or vote in the polls on election day. But you have to provide additional residency verification. All of that information is readily available on the Secretary of State's website, but a brief overview would be something like a bank statement that said your name and address on it, a government document, a tax or utility bill that just says your name and address to show, yes, this person has moved to this new location.
Perfect. And I know I said that we were like, hey, put questions in the chat box and we'll get to them later, but Lucy had a great question. I'm just all related to this right now. If you have a pre-filled absent voter application, you recommend mailing it or dropping it off?
Dropping it off. I'm sorry. I'm going to take this one just because I've been talking about this like forever. And I actually have been encouraging every time that the Midland Daily News writes an article about absentee voting, that they encourage people to actually take the forms and or their ballots and drop them off at their local clerk's office, whether it be the city clerk or the township clerks. Right now, the U.S. Postal Service is struggling. They're having some issues with getting things out in a timely manner. I'm not picking on them, certainly by any stretch of the imagination. But if you have the ability to be able to take these documents into your local clerk's office, you really need to do that. If you go into the city clerk's office, when we have absentee ballots available, you turn in that application. They actually will give you your ballot right there. You can stand in a booth, you can vote it, and you can turn it right back into them. If you go to one of the township's office and you turn in your application, they will give you a ballot right there. You can vote it, you can turn it in, and you're done. You voted, you're done for the day. And it just takes the whole Postal Service out of the equation, where you're not going to have to worry about the fact that, if I sent my ballot in 2 weeks ago, did the clerk receive it? There are ways that you can track your ballot online, and we can talk about that later, and I can give you the information for that, and I'm certainly, Erica can do the same. But this way, you're done. You go in, you turn it in person, and you get your ballot, and you vote it, and you're done. So I really recommend doing it in person. Erica, do you have any other thing that you want to say about that? But
I would just add that in the city of Midland, because we have so many now, I wouldn't want to inconvenience people by expecting to show up in our office and instantly receiving their ballot, because if 15,000 people did that, we'd have lines out the door, which is what we're expecting for November. But we have that Dropbox available, so you know that it got there, and we do provide that service. So especially if you're not going to get the chance to bring the ballot back to us and you just want to vote it. Those people that are going out of town, and the ballots are available, that week before they leave, we want you to just vote it and leave it with us. If you are someone who right now, about 5 weeks away from when ballots are going to be available, are thinking about this and you want to be prepared for November and you want to vote absentee, I recommend turning in your application right now. We are already starting to process those applications in my office so that on the very first day ballots are available, we're going to get them out to everybody. That leaves about 5 weeks for the Postal Service to deliver your ballot to your home, which is more than triple the amount of time that it should take. So even if there are very large delays, and plus in the city of Midland, our ballots are actually hand sorted. So they're not getting sent down to a Metroplex to get mailed to you if you're within the city. We are, keeping them within the city and they're going to be delivered to you. Then you have that ability that Ann was talking about to walk it back into our office or take it to the drop box so that that it was received. You can track that. Like she said, we're going to give you the resource to be able to look up and see if your city or township clerk has received your ballot back in the office to be ready to be counted on election day. But the sooner that you can turn in that application or make your decision and prepare to vote, the better. The application, if you are somebody that needs to mail it in, I still recommend doing that right now. If you're someone that needs to mail your ballot in because you don't have the ability to drive to drop it off, or you're out of town, then we recommend a minimum of 2 weeks mailing time. And we work with everybody. So if your ballot, really does go missing in the mail or something like that, we have a process for you to be able to come into our office and spoil that ballot that was sent out. Each one has a unique ballot number on it. So we can say, okay, this ballot's not allowed to be counted. We're giving you a new one right here in person. So we do assist those people in person, and you can utilize that process to just vote in person. But right now we're preparing a very large mailing of the ballots on the very first day that we are going to have them. So the most people, that's the way we can reach the most people at once.
Great. I'm going to pop this question over to Angie, but just from here on out, everybody else can just jump in because I think there's going to be a lot of overlapping on some of these answers. As a voter, what can you do to be prepared for election day? Is there anything, and I guess, again, this is for everybody, be prepared. What do you need to bring? What do you do if somebody asks you for something that you didn't think you were supposed to have when you're there at the polls filling out the little tab before you hand it over to them? What do you need to do?
Well, I can tell you for me, this year I will be voting absentee, but in the past, I didn't. I always went to the polls and I always went before I went to work. So I had a very short period of time to get into the polls, to vote, to leave, to get to my job. So I always went on the internet, and I still do, go on the internet and I look at my ballot. So I know every single race that I need to make a decision in. I know all the ballot proposals ahead of time. So when I receive that ballot at the polls, or even if I receive it in the mail, it literally takes me a minute and a half, possibly maybe shorter, to fill that ballot out because my decisions are already made. I've already made them. And it's so less stressful when you go to the polls. If you take a look at that ballot first, you know exactly how you're going to vote.
Absolutely. And what is a great, because I know I've just gone online and it's check my ballot, something. Is there a standard website that is a good one to use to see your ballot beforehand?
The Michigan Voter Information Center actually looks up your ballot by precinct or by your district that you're in, because you could be in the same precinct but be in a different school district. So if you go to that Michigan Voter Information Center and you can check out some information, as you can see on the left there under your voter information, it can say what's on my ballot is the third one down, I believe. And you can check out your sample ballot there. This is also a great way to check if you're registered, find out who your clerk is and how to contact them, and see, if you've already turned in your application for an absentee ballot, to see if the clerk's already mailed it to you. All those things that Ann was talking about earlier is all available on here to track your ballot. I definitely agree that knowing what is on your ballot is a really big help ahead of Election Day. It helps you understand things like straight party voting, proposals, and this is why voter registration is so important too, because each precinct or each location where you live might have a different candidate or a different proposal on the ballot. So that's why it is important that you register correctly in the place where you are living now, so that you are voting on the issues that pertain to your taxes and your representatives.
Yeah, even if you're voting straight party, there are races on there. For example, because this is Midland County, Bay, and Saginaw, Delta College trustee, right? That's a nonpartisan race. And so you have to make a decision. So even if you, just, check the box R or D, whichever one, you have to make a decision in those races.
Yes, and the proposals as well are nonpartisan. So and they're, those are those ones where you show up at the poll and they have the poster board that's the size of the wall on there. You don't necessarily want or have the ability to understand all of that by reading it while you're standing in line there or standing in the voting booth. Those are great things to know about ahead of time.
Absolutely.
Great. Let's see. So I know there are always the stories about, and I know it's happened. My parents got my brother's application and he's not lived in their house in 10 years, but yeah, he got an application for a ballot and they were like, oh my God, I know that, we know, but for anybody that sees a question or sees something on social media, like, oh my God, how can we be sure that this is safe? How can we ensure?
I'll answer that.
Tell me about it. Tell me how this works from you guys' perspective.
So basically, and again, Erica and my township clerks are more the expert on this, but I can tell you that this question I've probably received more calls on this question than anything else this election, because the Secretary of State, as we all know, sent out 7.2 million applications for absentees, okay? And they went to everyone who was in the qualified voter file. We know as clerks, as city clerks, township clerks, county clerks, that there are people who are on our voter registration rolls that do not live in the state of Michigan anymore, do not live in our jurisdictions. However, we only have certain tools at our disposal to know when people leave our jurisdictions. So we now have the ability for other states to contact us and let us know if someone received a driver's license in Florida, say. Mm-hmm. We will be notified of that. Sometimes we have people who contact us and say, my dad was living in Arizona and he passed away and he got a application for a absentee ballot. So then we can mark that individual as deceased. But there are people that got the applications that no longer live in Midland County. We know that. They don't live at those addresses anymore. But one thing you can be assured of is Michigan has some of the best election laws in the state, or actually in the nation, where we require, if you send an application for an absentee ballot, we get on our qualified voter file, which is tied to your driver's license or your personal ID. And the very first thing that Erica and or my township clerks check is your signature. If your signature on that application does not match your personal ID or your driver's license, you're not going to get a ballot. Now, Erica and the township clerks are going to contact you or try to say, hey, your signature doesn't match, so you either need to come in and fill out a new application or whatever it is that they need you to do. And if you don't do that, then you're not going to get a ballot, okay? So I'm not going to be able to get an absentee ballot for Erica because I don't know how Erica signs her name, and no one's going to be able to verify that the signature that I signed is Erica's signature because it's never going to look the same, right? So once the application is verified, then we will send the ballot. When we get the ballot back, again, that's the very first thing we do is we check the signature to make sure that it matches. Now, we have had some issues here in Midland County in some of our townships where we have parents who want their kids who are in college to be able to vote. So what they'll do is the kids might sign the application to request the ballot, but then they're at school. And so when the ballot comes, mom or dad takes the ballot out and they may call the kid and ask them how they want to vote. That's possible. but then mom or dad signs the ballot envelope. So the ballot envelope comes back to the local jurisdiction. Again, they verify the signature. It doesn't match. So the city clerk and or the township clerk contacts that individual and says, hey, did you fill out this ballot and did you sign your name? Well, 9 times out of 10, it's like, well, no, mom just called me and we filled it out together over the phone and she signed my name. Well, that ballot's not going to count because it is not the actual person who filled it out and who signed it. So either the person has to come in person then to vote or their ballot doesn't count. So, and we've had that happen. So, and I mean, it is a crime. I mean, you can go to jail for falsifying election documents. So just be aware of that there is a punishment for that.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly check those signatures, and I've looked at thousands and thousands and thousands in my career, and you get pretty good at kind of telling, you can tell the difference between somebody's getting a little bit older and shakier in their handwriting versus like you can see the husband and wife's signatures are the same, that, maybe one of them was trying to help the other one out. And we always contact those people. It's not just that person doesn't get their ballot. We contact them. We prefer if you put your email address or your phone number on your application so that we can easily contact you and make sure, if we get your application a couple of days before the deadline and we can't contact you, that puts you at a loss for potentially getting your ballot. So if you have that phone number on there and we can call you that day and say, here's your options for how we can correct this and still get you your ballot so you can vote, it's much easier, but we will take other extremes. I've actually gone to people's homes before to try and contact them to help them to be able to correct the issue that's going on. We send letters out if we have enough time, and that's the only way we have to contact the voter. We use every tool we can to try and correct the error, but sometimes there are people who are doing things wrong and they shouldn't do it that way, but we catch them. We also see other things, some people, an example from my office is I had 2 applications from people who had voted earlier in the year when they lived here in Michigan, but had requested their ballot be mailed to another state, but then they didn't put a return date on there. So that's really indicative to me that, maybe they missed that part of the application or they just weren't really sure, so they didn't write anything. But we contact every single one of those applications like that at my office and say, okay, did you actually move to this new location and you need to register to vote there? Can I help you figure out how to do that? Or are you only there temporarily? Because getting an application does not entitle you to a ballot. So even if somebody was mailed 1,000 applications at one home, that would only entitle them to their own single ballot. And we would also notice if somebody tried to request, ballots for 50 people and they were all being delivered to one address, because those ballots are all in one precinct and we would process them as a group. And so you would very easily notice similarities in handwriting going to the same address. You can see how many registered voters live at that address. You get very familiar with catching those irregularities and contacting voters to make sure that it's a legitimate request.
Perfect. That's great. And it sounds like, and I will get to this as well. Sounds like it's a pretty ironclad, pretty tight process that's not open for interpretation. It's not loosey-goosey. It's definitely this is serious, and you're committing a crime if you're doing something screwy on this. So it's great to hear. So, and we're getting near the end of the hour here, and so I want to leave a little time for Q&A, but I'm just fascinated because I usually vote in person, but I'm going to vote absentee this time. How are those ballots counted? Like, how does that work? Because I know that you can't necessarily start counting those or processing those before the election. Even if you got it in like 6 weeks early, which I don't know if that would be possible, it's not going to be counted until the day of, right? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so the current Michigan law, although there are some people that are working to try and change this a little bit given the changing circumstances in our state, you actually cannot open an absentee ballot until 7 a.m. on election day in the state of Michigan currently. We collect those ballots between the 45 days before the election when ballots are available until 8 p.m. on election day. But that entire time until 7 a.m. on election day, they are just stored securely. They're logged into our system. which you can track that it's been logged into the system and is ready to be counted on election day using that michigan.gov/vote website. And then on election day, a team of inspectors processes those ballots. For example, Ann knows in the townships that her township clerks still process the ballots in the precinct. So teams of people or the local clerk will assign people in those precincts on election day to open the absentee ballots and run them through the precinct tabulator on election day when there's a break in the line. But in the city of Midland, we had basically reached capacity to be able to do that. When I started in the city of Midland over a year ago, we had only about 17 to 5,000 absentee ballots per election, depending on the election, 1,700 to 5,000. But now in August, we issued almost 9,000 and received back 7,300 on election day. So to be able to do that, we use a team of inspectors in the basement of City Hall and something called an absent voter counting board. Those inspectors that work down there are of many different parties, mostly people half and half from each major party, the Republicans and the Democrats. They work in teams to kind of balance each other and make sure that there's no funny business, basically, that they're kind of checking each other. They're also under oath and are sequestered. So any information that they see regarding how the ballots are being counted on election day are meant to be kept private until the polls close, so they're not able to influence the election in any way. They also work in teams to make sure that any single person in that counting board does not actually know how a single individual voted. So on the outside of your envelope is your signature and your name, but the person that is verifying that information is not the same person that actually takes the ballot out of the envelope. It's a 3-step process to ensure voter privacy through the entire setup. And then we use something in Midland called a high-speed tabulator that runs the ballots through very quickly, a scanning program, just very similar to the tabulators that are in the precincts, just works at a higher speed to count those ballots. And there are some misconceptions that absentee ballots are only counted if a race is close or things like that, but we count every single ballot that we receive back that is eligible. So it has to be signed, the signature has to match, and it has to be received before 8 p.m. on election day. And the voter has to be alive on election day.
Just one thing I'd like to stress what Erica just said. That absentee ballot has to be signed. I've heard from a variety of different clerks that some people are not signing those absentee ballots. So
we do contact every single person that doesn't sign, but there were unfortunately 5 people that I was not able to get a hold of or weren't able to come in to correct that error in August. But I do, that's less than 1% of ballots cast. So, that's still something I try to avoid, but it is very important. It's a good step a voter can take to remember to do that to ensure their vote gets counted.
100%. Okay, good to know. I'm going to share one other resource here, Democracy MVP, and this is if you wanted to sign up to be an election worker. I was going to ask some leading question about if somebody wanted to get involved. But this is the resource you would recommend for, is it too late? If you were just really inspired, you want to be an election worker, can you do that still?
No, certainly not. I hired election inspectors on election day this year.
Okay.
You have to be certified, and so it's better to start now and to get certified. And does those trainings in the county of Midland, and there are people in Saginaw and Bay counties that also do that, the county clerk's office. But it's not too late. It's a great time to do it. I'm sure all of the clerks in the area will be hiring lots of people for the November election.
And I actually have the training module online. So if you go to the Midland County website and go to my page and go to election inspector, you can actually take the training online. And then at the end, it gives you some requirements that you have to send to me in order for me to certify you as an election inspector. So if if Erica hires you or one of the townships hires you and you can't make one of the trainings that I do, you can go to that website and you can take that training online, and we'll get you certified and you can work the election. So
it's also a good idea to contact your local clerk. This website is great if you're just somebody who wants to get involved and you're willing to work in any area, and there are a lot of people like that. But if you want to work in your own precinct or for your own township or city, you can go ahead and contact that local clerk. The application is available online. It's a generic application for the entire state of Michigan. So you can just fill it out and send it to your clerk, or you can give them a call and talk about what their particular process is. Each of us do have different requirements and different needs. So it's a good idea to contact them too. But this resource is great when, I'm short on people and I don't want to just put an ad in the paper. I'll go on here and see this list of people who are actively interested in participating.
Fantastic. Great. Well, we are running down on time here, which is great because we've gotten through so much, and I'm so thankful for all of the experts in the room here. If anybody has a question, and since we're running low on time, if you want to unmute yourself and speak up, or if you're feeling shy, you just want to pop it in the chat box, that's great too. But we've got a couple of minutes for additional questions if anybody has any. So. All right. Well, I guess we were very thorough then, and I think we got all of the things knocked off. But thank you to all of the superheroes who showed up and were our expert speakers today, and everybody who is committed to help get out the vote and to talk to your neighbors and coworkers and everybody you know, maybe host a Zoom party, just really get involved in the processes here. Is there any last words, our three experts, if you want to throw in there? I'm hearing call your clerk is like the top thing. Yeah. So
yes.
If you have any questions, call your clerk. But anything else you want to throw in?
Call your local township or city clerk. If you're going to request an absentee, do it early, get it returned early, either directly to the office or to the drop boxes. If you go to that voter information center, it will tell you where your drop box is located in your jurisdiction. Lots of good information out there. So yes, vote early.
Check out the michigan.gov/vote website. It has pretty much everything we've talked about is available on there. But if you don't find the answer easily, contact your local clerk for sure. I know in my office, and a lot of us are updated to this process, we take calls by phone, but we also take emails. And sometimes, that's the easiest way to reach us. Sometimes I'll answer an email at, 9:00 at night on my phone. If you have a question, just reach out.
And talk to your friends, family, and neighbors about voting. It's so important. As women, we have to remember that people died so we would have that right, and we need to exercise it.
Absolutely.
Amen. Great. I'm going to commit to posting this whole Zoom webinar online. So anybody, because I know there's a couple people who are like, oh, I want to be there, I can't. Can you send us the video? I can definitely do that. I'm going to make some social media things based on all of these resources that we've shared today. And people are going to be sick of hearing from me and the YWCA over the next few weeks, because this is excellent that we're just getting this information out and just doing everything we can to ensure it's a good turnout this year. So I sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for showing up tonight. And I guess it's humid out there, so it's like worst things than being inside and sitting down in air conditioning. But if you need to get a hold of us, Facebook is our most up-to-date information. We're always working, but we're not always in the office. If you need to reach us, that's the best way to do it. Our economic empowerment program is starting this fall. New anti-racism and financial management programming is starting this fall too. So I've always got the phone on me, so if you need anything, give me a call. But I'm going to sign off and say thanks again, and have a fantastic evening, everybody. And yeah, that's great. Have a good
Bye,
one.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.